because they'll be more interested in whatever you do. After you identify them, you want to start to build a relationship with them. So what does that mean? It doesn't mean you're going to take them out on dates. What that means is that you want to start a dialogue, meaning that if you talk to them, if you tweet them, then they'll tweet you back. Or if you email them, they'll say thank you. So you want to have a two-way dialogue. And one of the best ways to do it is to become a resource, meaning that you share helpful data, helpful tips, helpful breaking news to them so that they're aware of that. And lastly, after that, once you're ready to raise money online, then you'll be able to pitch them. Because now you have a relationship. Now you've been a resource to them, so they kind of owe you a little bit, and they're more likely to write about you. And the last thing, which is basically the easiest thing to do today, is to create a fundraising site. So I spent a lot of time talking about kind of the fundamentals. When you're trying to raise money for your commitment, especially when you're trying to do it online, the online piece is like the last piece. It's like the easiest piece. The hardest piece is always around the story, about community organizing, and about distributing and targeting the press. So after you have that down, then you focus, then it's very easy for you to focus on creating a fundraising site. You can create a fundraising site through CauseVox, or one platform to do it. There's other platforms out there. You can do it yourself too. So there's different ways to do it. But if you do that us, then we make it super easy for you to do the Gage crowdfunding campaigns and social fundraising. So what you want to do, whatever site you use, whatever approach you use, there's different tips I want to share with you. So these are tips that help you generate more donations, either through our own internal studies or through third-party studies. So the first thing to do when you're creating a fundraising site, which is basically a website with a donate button at the very minimum that allows you to take donations, is that you want it to be able to personalize it. Studies have shown that personalized sites yield you 14% more in donations at that one point in time. And then over the life of the donor, it gives you 39% more donations. So very tangible sums of money for you guys. So think about personalizing the site, meaning that you're able to change the logo, change the background, change the colors, so that it matches your story. Because part of the look and feel of the site involves storytelling, which is very important for fundraising. The second piece of it is that you should use some type of video. You saw Becky's video, which is very compelling, and you should think about if it's the right thing for you to do too. 80% of the most successful top grossing campaigns through our platform included some type of video. And the reason why video is so useful is because it conveys emotion. And fundraising is always about emotion in a relationship. Maya Angelou said that people share stories not because it's a great story. They share stories because they want to share the emotion that they get from the story. Happiness, joy, sadness, whatever it is, that's what they want to share. Another tip is that if you're doing a social cause, which I think most of you guys are doing, you should think about what we call personal and team fundraising. So when you have these true believers, you can take the approach that Chantel took, which is out of these 1,000 champions, you need 100 champions, sorry, that they're going to use that. Everybody's going to create their own personal page on your fundraising site, and then they can put a fundraising appeal on it, and then send it out to their friends and family to go support. This allows you to extend your reach, to get more awareness, and to get more donations. And the last thing that's super important, the gentleman before mentioned that you're trying to do social media fundraising. Social media fundraising is not difficult to do if you have great content. So in order to do social media fundraising successfully, it always starts with great content. So great content being either images, infographics, video, polls, narratives, stories, stuff like that. So when you have great content, you're able to use social media very effectively because that will share. People want to share with their friends. People want to distribute the message. And I think, so those are some of the tips for optimizing your site. And just as an afternote tip, so when I see successful fundraising campaigns, the defining factor, it isn't about the cause. It isn't about the individual. It's really about your hustle. Meaning that, are you able to buckle up and like smash through whatever goal that you have? Becky slept on her friend's couch for 10 months, but she tried to launch her nonprofit. Chantel sold her flat, which is an apartment, to start her nonprofit. So what are you willing to do? What are you willing to sacrifice to make sure that your commitment is fulfilled? So for you, hustle is so important. If you hustle, whatever you can do, you're going to learn from it, you're going to persevere, and you're going to succeed. So don't give up. And I have some resources. If you guys want some resources on storytelling, we have a free ebook. It's 53 pages long, 17 pages addendum, so it's not like an easy read, but it's everything you need to know about telling a story. So startstorytelling.com. You can look at that. On our blog, we publish bi-weekly fundraising tips for online fundraising, blog.CauseVox.com. You can follow us on Twitter. And lastly, if you do subscribe to our blog, we're releasing a few free fundraising guides. One is called the Definitive Guide to Online Fundraising Campaigns. So everything you need to know, whether it be publicity, hot triggers, finding true believers, creating a fundraising site, whatever it is, it's 20 pages long, then you can learn through that guide. Also, we have another guide called Grants for Online Fundraising, which Tyler is going to talk more about grants. But in this guide, it talks to you about how you can use grants for your online funding campaigns. So that's about it. We have questions later on after this. So I'm going to introduce Tyler. I'm going to invite him up. He's going to talk about grants.
Awesome. Yeah, let's talk some more about money. It's a topic for all of us. So great, my name is Tyler Gage. I'm the co-founder and co-CEO of Runa. So first, I'd like to take a little poll. So who's fundraising specifically for a nonprofit venture? You raise your hand. And who's fundraising for a for-profit venture? Got a handful. Anyone trying to do a hybrid for-profit, nonprofit? Handful? Cool. All right, so we can touch on all those points. So first, what's Runa? Runa is an organization that creates livelihoods for indigenous farmers in the Amazon. Specifically, what we do is we build markets for products that these farmers produce. Our main product is a line of beverages that we make from an Amazonian super leaf. It's a leaf that's native to Ecuador, has as much caffeine as coffee, double the antioxidants of green tea, and a really clean taste. So we work directly with farmers, make beverages, and have designed our organization around that structure. So what I'd like to do is to take some time to walk you through our story with Runa. So me and my best friend started Runa as undergraduates at Brown. So I have the experience of launching right out of college and how that's brought us to where we are now, about 3.5 years later. So kind of summarizing some of the points that Rob mentioned, when I look at fundraising, I think about it as a persistent game of storytelling. So very much in line with how Rob looks at it as well. Very persistent, the game and storytelling's the name of the game. So hopefully in telling the story about Runa, I'm going to touch on some specific tools, strategies, tips, and tricks which we picked up along the way. So my quick background, I studied literary arts at Brown. A really great foundation for starting a beverage company and organization. My business partner studied marine biology. We often argue whose degree was less applicable. But during my research, I spent a lot of time in the Amazon. Worked with different indigenous communities, saw that they really struggled to make money. They wanted to send their kids to school, but they had to cut down trees. And there's no sustainable economic options for these farmers. At the same time, for them, the rainforest is their pharmacy, it's their supermarket. They have incredible, rich treasure of biodiversity. So one of the plants which I fell in love with was this leaf called guayusa. They drink it every morning, gives the hunters really good energy, great taste, but no one was commercially producing it. So brought that idea back, teamed up with my buddy Dan at Brown. We took an entrepreneurship class, first business course I'd taken at school, and had to write a business plan for our venture. So we started from absolute scratch, trying to figure out the dynamics of supply chain, marketing, sales. What would it look like to build a company that could produce this product, make it a sustainable venture, and design it in a way that would create the most impact for farmers. So we looked at it very much from a social perspective and saw the market mechanism as the tool to accomplish our mission. So I did study writing, so thankfully we wrote a pretty good business plan. We ended up winning Brown's entrepreneurship group's business plan competition, and then we won the Rhode Island State business plan competition. So we're pretty surprised. We were graduating then fall of 2008. At that point, I had a Fulbright grant to keep doing my research. My business partner was going into consulting, but we took a step back and said, cool opportunities ahead of us, but if we could make this work, we could really make a difference. if we could really make this kind of business work, prove that business and markets can be forces for social good, that's something that we could look back and feel really good about. And probably we're going to fail. 99% chance that a year from now we'll be back doing something else. But what the heck? What do we have to lose? We have nothing to lose. We'll get some good experience, fall on our face and make one of ourselves and find something else to do. So about 2 days after graduating, we moved to Ecuador, packed our backpacks, went straight down. And we did 2 things initially. So the first thing we did was we talked to everyone we possibly could. So back to Rob's point about hustle, we literally spent 6 months traveling all throughout Ecuador, talking to every nonprofit, farmer cooperative, business organization, export industry, just trying to get the best sense we could of the landscape of development, of market development, all that sort of stuff. So that hustle, that relationship building was absolutely essential, that then gave us a knowledge and a voice to really talk from an informed perspective about what we wanted to do. The second thing we did, which was absolutely critical, is we built an advisory board. So again, Dan Tyler, Murray Bio, Literary Arts, didn't really have a whole lot of polished experience to go out and raise money and do what we wanted to do. So what we did is we brought on an advisory board. So in our case, it was everyone from we built relationships with the president of the World Wildlife Fund, an SVP at Pepsi Logistics. So people who had good reputation in and of themselves, loved what we were trying to do, wanted to contribute, had that enthusiasm, and we put them on our advisory board. So on one level, great for fundraising, because when people are flipping through, the first thing they're asking is this serious? Is this going to happen? Is this going to work? And we can point to a group of advisors who are investing time and energy in your organization. It's a big check of credibility. So that was really critical to us in Ecuador, saying, hey, we got these guys from Pepsi and Snapple and Hershey, big believers in this business. And if you're in Ecuador, you're like, well, I don't know what beverages are like in the United States, but these guys do, so they think it'll work, I can think it'll work as well. So that advisory board has been critical for us ever since the get-go. And for fundraising as well, all of them have relationships, ideas, partnerships, and they can really be some fuel for the fundraising initiative. So advisory boards are critical. So where do we go for our first sources of funding? Who's heard of the 3 Fs? Do you know the 3 Fs? Can you tell me what the 3 Fs are?
Friends, family, and fools.
Friends, family, and fools, exactly. Yeah, so the 3 Fs are usually your go-to, first-run fundraising. So your family, who else is more bought into you as an individual than your family? Your friends, call them any time of the day, harass them, get them to give you $10, $1,000, and fools. So anyone who says, oh yeah, I'll give you $5,000 and you're going to send somebody to the moon, of course, that makes so much sense here, here's $5,000. The fool category is also critical. As a for-profit company, we started raising money under a convertible debt strategy. I can talk about more later if people want to know, but I'm a big believer in convertible debt as a fundraising strategy for for-profits. And on the nonprofit side, we somehow convinced the export ministry in Ecuador to give us a $50,000 grant. We had our huge business plan, our pro formas, and somehow they said, yeah, great, we want to invest in new Ecuadorian exports, and we wanted to find some new crops that could help these farmers earn more sustainable income. So another kind of key fundraising trick is fake it till you make it. Major believer in fake it till you make it. Our business plan looked amazing. We had crazy pro formas, all sorts of stuff. Calculations on return of investment, the farm level, economics, secondary benefits, the full deal. We didn't really know if any of that was true, but we told a really good story. Told a great story, got people on board, and got the enthusiasm high. And you kind of always have to have that. You can't lie. Don't lie. Don't push that boundary too far. But if you can story tell them the right way, you can build some momentum around what you're doing. So that grant we got from the export ministry was critical. As any organization grows, that credibility piece is huge. So we had the advisory board credibility, which was great. Then we got the Ecuadorian government to give us money. Great credibility. We could use that to then go back to our funders in the U.S. and start spinning that further and further along. But what it allowed us to do, that first $50,000, we were able to build our first factory. So in fundraising terms, this was the world's first production and research institution to investigate and produce native Amazonian teas for export to the U.S. market. What it looked like in practice was like a little steel chamber, and the back of this dude's bamboo garage with chickens running around. But at the same time, we had a facility where we could really test what we wanted to do, get concrete knowledge, and start figuring out the basics of, hey, this is a leaf which has never been processed or sold before. What are temperatures like? What kind of leaves do you harvest? All those basic questions. It gave us a really concrete way to get some lessons going. And on the fundraising side, what it taught me and what we learned from that was to always think about sequential fundraising. So everyone in here, like big dreamer, big vision, want to help hundreds of thousands of people, you have to take small steps to get there. So on the fundraising side, say we talked to someone in July of 2009 and said, yeah, we're going to build this big supply chain for Guayusa. They're like, yeah, great, yeah, sure, it sounds great. Like, yeah, just keep me informed about your progress. So we'd say, great, so 3 months from now, I'm going to come back to you. We're going to have a test factory. We're going to have research around leaf quality. We're going to have our first export done. And they look at us very skeptically and shoo us away. 3 months later, we go back and say, hey Mitch, it was great talking to you 3 months ago. Here's pictures of our factory. Here's the research reports, and here's like the first bill of lading for our export. And Mitch says, oh, wow, I'm quite surprised that you actually did what you said you were going to do. Hey, maybe that convinced me. Sure, I'm going to chip in some money and support your venture. Or he might say, yeah, that's great progress. I want to see you get a little further. And then we say, great, 4 months from now, we're going to have our products designed. We're going to have our first accounts on board and our first sales to show you 3 months from now. 3 months later, small targets, get it done, and build that way. So it's great for fundraising because as you have small successes, you can really leverage those to prove to people that you're serious, that you're getting things done, you're making it work, and that you know how to execute on your goals. Sure, in 3 months you might not have a million farmers or a million toilets built or whatever your impact is, but that sequential progress is absolutely critical. And even from a management point of view, everyone has big ideas, it's tough, everyone's trying to change the world. It can be extremely daunting to think too big picture about what you want to do, but when you can really hone in, know what you have to do for a short period of time, it keeps you focused and can keep you pretty inspired. So that was kind of the next wave of growth for us. Rob talked about relationships. So the woman that ran this fund in the export ministry for these grants went to another ministry in Ecuador, and they decided to create an investment vehicle. So the Ecuadorian national government would make equity investments to buy small chunks of growing companies based on sustainable supply chains and then help them grow, with the vision of then selling their shares to the farmers, opening up equity pools, this whole thing. But because we knew her, we did really well with the grant, we were her first phone call. So she said, hey, we're creating this new fund, come in and talk to us. That was 16 months before we actually got the money from them. I mean, ultimately it was great. We got the Ecuadorian government to invest $500,000 in our company in Ecuador. Great, big success, and they've been really important allies to us. But that timing as well. So if you're looking at like big investors, big brands, big institutions, it takes time. And it's really important to hustle early, make sure you get your cash flow going, but to invest in those longer term relationships. And as you build relationships and successes, people move different places, they have ideas. Once you do well by them, they'll introduce you to more people. So keeping in touch with those key supporters, tracking them, keeping them up to date with your progress is absolutely critical. So that was our growth in Ecuador. And then in the States, we came back and we said, cool, we got to produce this leaf. So in Ecuador, basically, the farmers grow the leaves in the rainforest. They harvest it and pay them high prices. We transform it into like loose leaf tea and we export it to the States. So that was a great success. We built the world's first supply chain for this native Amazonian tea. But that was only part of the puzzle. What makes our business work is sales. So we got the production set up. We have, at this point now, over 2,500 farmers growing Guayusa, but we had to make the product and get it to market. So we worked with a design firm, designed the first product. They were these big, way overly priced, kind of off tea boxes, but we had a product. And if you look at our fundraising history, the second we had a product, our ability to fundraise doubled. Because we could physically show someone like, here, like, this is it, drink this, see this, this is real. So in your organization, that could be, if you're trying to build a toilet. Do everything you can as fast as possible to build a toilet. If you're trying to do an education program, educate some kids. Take 2 kids, educate them, do it. The second you have that experience, can take the pictures, the reports, even if it's on a very small scale, your ability to fundraise will be substantially higher. Because when people can see it, they can imagine it, they know it's real, they know you've accomplished something, then they're a much bigger believer. Second, you can kind of pull it out of the ethers of the dream world. Your ability to get people involved will be that much higher. And the other thing too, I'm a big believer in nice materials. So again, we look at our original business plans, good content, but didn't look very nice. As as we polished up our materials and made things look really nice, really sharp, it's important. So even if you invest some of your limited resources to make sure you have a good logo, a good website, a good fundraising page on your website, it's really critical. And that's been a major driver to help us grow. So those are some quick tips and tricks. I think we want to get into some discussions. I think we're going to do anything. Give us the.
Yeah, the lowdown is this is a dinner style voting. So I think maybe 2 or 3 just sort of talk amongst yourself, but really to I think reflect back on what you heard from Rob and Tyler, and then questions. And I know you guys probably all have 100 questions. So maybe identify the best 1 or 2. We have, I think after we do 5 or 10 minutes, about half an hour. So we want to make sure we hear from as many people as possible. So if you guys could sort of determine what the best question is for your group, and then we will come back together as a large team. And I think Rob and Tyler might float around. So let's start brainstorming. Let's use them wisely to talk about the 3 F's. There's also something for Q&A called the B rule, and that is quick, be bright, and then be gone. So let's ask very concise questions and let everybody have an opportunity to speak. So I'll let you guys select and
something about officials or district status.
In general, I would say having an organization really helps. So one trick that some initiatives can use, or like for example, you could register a charity organization. So we did with our nonprofit, we registered like a Rhode Island charity, which took 24 hours. You can get something called fiscal sponsorship by a 501c3. So that's a really effective mechanism. Registering a full nonprofit in the US can take some time, 6 to 18 months. But if you get a nonprofit which is similar to your mission, people can donate, give tax-deductible donations to the registered 501c3. They'll take a small cut and then pass through the funds. So finding an organization that's a registered 501c3 that believes in what you're doing and can act as your fiscal sponsor is a way to shortcut that.
So if you're just starting out, if people don't know you, they'll be more hesitant to give you money, unless there's like friends and family. So that's why it's important to get that fiscal sponsorship. There are specific nonprofits that are fiscal sponsors. Usually they take anywhere from around 6% of whatever you raise. So one thing you do is actually find a nonprofit that's not specifically a fiscal sponsor. But what they do is not just fiscal sponsorship. So find somebody that you're not directly competing with, that you can complement, and they'll be more willing to give you a fiscal sponsorship. And more likely than not, they probably won't try to compete for that either.
Is it worth it to get an internal audit from a government perspective?
How many years has your organization been around? You've never had an audit?
No.
Do you have funders requesting an audit?
Not really. But like it would allow us for ourselves on databases that do require an audit.
I mean, if there is like a portal that you see that will give you access to another level of funders, it sounds like it might be worth it. The other thing you can do, so we're doing a review right now, as opposed to an audit, which at least for most of our funders satisfies the checks. I don't know to get on those databases if that's required or not, but I mean, it's kind of just placing your bet if you think it's going to get you that next level or not.
How long did you guys just wait until now to do review? Do you think there's a certain time when it's appropriate or a certain size?
I think it really depends. I mean, if say you have funders who are bankrolling you and they don't need it, don't waste the money. At least in my experience, 3 to 5 years kind of minimum. If you're 1, 2, 3 years auditing financials as a startup, it feels like kind of a waste to me. That's just my perspective. Agreed.
So you showed us a great overview on the sales project. And my question was, what if you have a great story like that, but you don't necessarily have the recent resources or personal skill set to make a pro video like that?
Sure. Yeah. So one of the interesting things is that some of the top grossing campaigns on our platform, it wasn't a professional video, like what you just saw. So we just like a talking head through a webcam, and those work too. So you don't need to have professional videos to tell your story. As long as there's ways that you can, what we call hack it, by either doing it yourself using like your iPhone camera. So we talk about that in the Start Storytelling ebook. So don't be too concerned about the production quality per se. Think more about the message that you're trying to convey.
There's a gentleman in the back who's raising his hand. Oh,
I'm not a
sorry, young
gentleman.
lady, sorry about that.
It's okay. All right. I wanted to know more information about getting corporations to match grants we received. We received a $5,000 grant from Zipcar, and we want to double our money. How would you go about doing that?
So there's a question, I have a little trouble hearing about matching.
Matching grants.
Have you guys done stuff with matching grants?
Yeah, so a bunch of nonprofits that are trying to fundraise online, they try to get matching grants, specifically to double the amount of donations that you get, not from that organization, but from individual donors. So one of the fundraising tactics that you can use is to get a matching grant from a corporate sponsor, and then from there say, hey, your donation is up to $50,000, we match dollar for dollar, and then if your individual donors will be more willing to donate. In order to get them, and it goes back to their relationships, to what Tyler mentioned before, in order to get a grant from any type of organization, whether it be a corporate sponsor or a foundation, usually it starts with having a strong relationship. Becky, the example that I showed, in another campaign called the Water Campaign, typically she gets a $25,000 grant from a foundation. And the only way that she got that grant is because of her previous work with Sharing Water, so that those relationships. So start with there, start with discussion. You shouldn't ask for the grant when you need it, so you should prepare in advance by developing a relationship with those foundations beforehand.
Question?
Yeah, you talked about reaching out to the press and not necessarily harassing, but continuing to push in and reach out and continue. What's the easiest way to reach the press?
Easiest way, meaning in terms of how to do it?
Yeah, how to do it, the fundamental, the process.
So never call them. Never call them. If you can develop a dialogue with them face to face, to do that. One way to do it is you can stalk them on Foursquare if you want to. That's a lot of work. Or you can go to conferences that they'll be at. So that's another way. You have to do your research beforehand. But probably the most cost-effective way for anyone to do it is just to build that directory, that list of people, and then engage with them on Twitter. Because then it doesn't feel like you're harassing them, really. It's like you're trying to start a dialogue. And they can choose to ignore you if they want, very easily. Or you can also do email too. Short emails, nothing too long. Probably something that's under 150 words, usually, typically, with a great subject line. So you never want to start with the ask. So let's say your goal is to get written about by Fast Company. You never want to just say, hey, please write about us because you're awesome. But you want to develop that relationship beforehand. So probably maybe 2 months before you need to actually get written out, then you start talking to them, start doing dialogue. So, and just keep up to date, What Tyler mentioned, persistent storytelling for funders. It's the same thing, persistent storytelling for funds.
Where do you initially find the email or phone number? You mentioned directory?
Google is very good. So start with a list of people. So find the publications that you want to get written up in. I think for your case, it might be like Engadget, Gizmodo, maybe even Lifehacker, kind of those sites.
So I worked a lot with iPhone apps previously, so I have contacts on iPhones, etc. So when I went there, I just skimmed the articles and grabbed the name of the guys from the bottom and then emailed them. But I found that that's not that efficient because you don't get all the emails in the file, it takes time to aggregate it. But when you say a directory, I'm wondering if there's a certain thing.
Yeah, so one thing was called a muckrack, M-U-C-K-R-A-C-K. Can't spell sometimes. Basically, it lists journalists and their Twitter handles. So that's one way to do it. If you want emails, just paid services. I don't have that off the top of my head, but you guys are college students. I assume that you don't want to pay for anything. So what I would do is actually try to find the people that write in your feed. first or that you have a relationship with. And then one thing you do is you can, if you guys have LinkedIn, you can look in LinkedIn, try to search for a person and see if you're connected with them in a second or third degree. You are asked for a recommendation or an intro from one of the people that's connected. So you can bypass the whole email thing. The second way is that a lot of the publications have common ways that they create email addresses. So one thing you do, let's say you're trying to target TechCrunch, and basically how the email works is first name dot last name at TechCrunch. Then obviously you know that, okay, this is the person's first name and last name that I want to target. You can probably just like shoot off an email, see if you get a bounce back or not. Or it could be first letter of the first name and then the last name at NewYorkTimes.com. So I mean, there are ways you can hack it.
Do you know how New York Times formats it?
I don't find out. So first thing that I've done before is you go on Google, you put a quote at NewYorkTimes.com, quote, put in the person's first name, last name. So usually it pops up with something. You might not want to start with like senior editors. Start with somebody at the bottom of the barrel, meaning that they just started. Because typically they hand out those emails left and right because they're trying to like get started. So that's a good way to hack it.
Question?
I have a question. So when you went and you started your idea and you became had a fiscal partnership or something to get donations, but then now you have a product. And so is that a business? And or are you know, how does that work in terms of selling your product?
Yeah, I didn't really get too much into our model. Technically, we have 4 organizations. We have a U.S. company, an Ecuadorian company, a U.S. 501c3, and an Ecuadorian nonprofit. The short story is that our foundation really carries the mission, just creating livelihoods, and one important branch of that is the creating markets. So we use creating markets, supply chains, value chains as a way to generate income for the communities, and then the nonprofit provides the education, the health services, the partnerships, all of that to really make it a livelihood and not just an income source, is the short of it. Yeah, so we fundraise, today we probably raised like $1 million for the nonprofit, probably about 5 for the for-profit, and then the for-profit partly funds the nonprofit, but we try and keep them pretty separate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Alvarado. I'm from Belize, Central America. My commitment is to build the first hospice in partnership with the Ministry of Health. I came last year to this fundraising session, not this one. This is very helpful, by the way, and I would like to use it. I've been able to raise $20,000 of these dollars since last year, and also generate some significant strategic partnerships and donations in kind to build the first hospice. However, there's this vacuum. We've also acquired enough equipment to, furnish the entire hospice that we would like to build. And I've purchased a 1-acre property and donated to the hospice. What's missing is the funding to build this establishment, and it's extremely difficult to fundraise for infrastructure here in the U.S. For infrastructure in developing countries. Do you have any suggestions? One of the things I would like out of this, I came all the way from Belize. One thing on my list, and I met with 2 funders on Thursday, potential funders. One that I was rejected from the previous year because they decided to focus all their contributions to education. End of life care is not a top priority. It's greatly needed, and we're established in a region of the country with the highest prevalence of HIV and AIDS and cancer. And
You can probably speak to about fundraising for infrastructure.
One of the things, though, what I would like to say is I have from the Social Investment Fund, they actually build facilities, and the BNE Trust, they make financial contributions from what we've raised and what we are hoping to generate from the BNE Trust to present a strong case for partnership with the Social Investment Fund. They've asked for a support letter from the Clinton Global Initiative, and they said that would significantly strengthen the potential the possibility and everybody said, yes, we want to do this, but we have to know that this is successful. What's your advice?
Talking to someone who's living global yeah, I mean, so be persistent and talk to everybody at CGI and see if you get the letter. It would be great. I think it brings up an interesting point. Who's working in developing countries? A lot of people. What is the number one source of capital for social programs in developing countries? Government. Especially in a place like Ecuador, if you look at the total dollars government invests in social programs compared to foreign funders, it's not even comparable. So for a lot of infrastructure projects, for example, again, Ecuador, but there's probably a handful of ministries that are all somewhere in there. And one of the benefits in a lot of developing countries is a lot of these governments and ministries are fairly incompetent, and there's a lot of turnover, and you have it's a pretty common thing. So if you can come as a legit organization and say part of your, part of the government goals that have been passed down to you is to say build a health clinic. I have the capacity, the resources, the knowledge to build a health clinic. Give me the money, I'll build a health clinic. You can go and get all your praises and everything, and then I've just built my health clinic. So not underestimating the power of governments. Government funding can be tricky, it can be long, it's kind of its own crazy world. But if you're really looking at where there's large sources of funds for specific things in particular areas, definitely don't underestimate government funding. Yeah, we can talk about that later.
You both build organizations in new markets. Can you give us some resources to help us scale our ventures that we're trying to go into new markets?
You said like foreign markets or just new opportunities?
New markets, giving some scale to how we write this into our business plan and then asking for financial
Thanks, Rob. Well, so specifically, are you talking more about the storytelling side, or the projections, or what?
Financial projections. Your expenses.
Trying to, any time you can get comparable financials from similar organizations, that's invaluable. If you know anyone else doing anything like what you're doing, or someone who might have done something before, who you want to share, that's always invaluable. Because then if you look at their expense history, their projections, that's always, that's kind of the most valuable resource. And then similarly, if you get advisors and mentors who've done similar things, that's we built our entire financial model talking to 3 of our advisors. And it looks really snazzy, but we were kind of just asking questions, plugging in numbers. So just leaning on people that have had the experience is probably the most effective thing.
Yeah. So when it comes to financials, what's important is not the numbers that you come up with. It's more about you understanding the drivers behind them. Drivers meaning that what levers. So basically, what will cause your revenue to go up? What will cause your expenses to go down? Kind of understanding what is behind the numbers that drive that. So I think that's the most important thing about financial forecasting. Secondly, in terms of resources, there's plenty of books out there. If you just go to Amazon and search financial projections, there's how-to books that they use from someone without a financial background all the way to developing a market model. And I'm assuming you're still in college or grad school, right? Right. So go into the business department of your school, find a person that teaches finance, and because he'll give you more resources than I can. In the back.
I've been running into a lot of issues with fundraising for a nonprofit and dealing with skepticism of investment in overhead, for advertising and stuff like that, because of all of our donors are very focused on to see the donations directly to the cause rather than the investment in the company itself. Can you approach investors and to preach the importance of investing in overhead? Is there any strategies for that?
What's your percentage?
25%.
I think you said to find a way to justify it, or a way to spend it.
We have financial planning, but even through that, it's hard to present it tangibly to smaller investors.
Yeah, I think it's likely that you're not targeting the right investors, because if you're targeting the right investor, they'll understand that when you're trying to start up, you need to invest in infrastructure. Right? If you're talking to any type of business person, then they'll just like forego the money fee. So at this point in time, we're probably not targeting the right investor or the right donor. And maybe targeting two downstream, maybe two mainstream. So kind of look up into like people who have more business savvy, either that or foundations that have a little bit more understanding of what it takes to start an organization, and then they'll be the right people to talk to in the beginning.
I mean, in our experience, I think that's constantly an issue. Like even at our level right now, like we're getting multi-$100,000 grants from programs and still like hustling to raise overhead. I think for a lot of organizations, it's a challenge depending on where you are. I mean, that's partly where the private donors are great. Because depending on your space, if you're raising it from like USAIDs or government people, they want really line item grants. So keeping some bucket of private donors, people that just believe in the cause, and spinning the story in a way that gives critical injection of capital, provide the foundation for everything else, you can kind of spin it, but it's challenging. The other trick which we've done a bit is in some of the bigger grants, if you're writing grants that are very line item specific, you can kind of weave in some level of your operating expenses. And there are some tips and tricks to do that, so you can sort of at least chip away at some of the things which are kind of on the margin.
We have time for 2 more questions.
Go ahead. Who hasn't raised their hand?
Okay. I actually, for the person who has to think about the overhead, before I get to my question, something that might help is if you've read the book Forces for Good, it's like Bible for nonprofit management.
What is it called?
Forces for Good.
Forces for Good.
Forces for Good. One of the things they really addressed is, it's a myth that you have to keep your, overhead costs below 5% of your total, revenue and all of that. And maybe reading something from there might be able to help you with addressing that issue. So, I don't know. So my question was, we have a 501c3 organization, but even then with fundraising, the big thing for us has always been, it's still about building relationships. Could you just give everyone some general advice on going through that process of targeting who you want to establish a relationship with, taking that first connection and kind of going from there?
I mean, the short is meet a lot of people. So like don't underestimate the value of meeting tons of people. At a certain point, your kind of return, when you meet 10 people, one might be helpful. I can name a couple of our investors who I met through like 6 connections. Met one person, introduction, finally led to someone. So I think just being really like kind of aggressive is the right word, proactive, meeting a lot of people. And then always asking for recommendations. Like, hey, who else could you introduce me to? As specific of an ask as possible usually helps. Keeping the people you talk to early aware of what happened with other relationships is helpful. Say, hey, thanks for introducing me to Bill, he was great. And then I'd say, oh, great, we talked to Bill, we should also talk to Martha. So keeping those early people up to date with what you're doing helps.
On top of that, just not only just to the specific donors, but also just make sure you have the feedback. So whatever they invested in you before, what was the impact, communicate that impact back to them, so you close the donor through that loop. From there, when you do that, that generates a lot of loyalty, basically. So with more loyalty from those donors, then they'll refer their friends. You can even ask for them to refer their friends. That's a good way. So there's some tips.
Yeah, the only other thing too, I maybe should have talked about earlier is the better you get at knowing the faces of your story, the more effective you can be. And that's huge. So, there are different angles to what you do, and if you talk to someone who's really interested in like metrics, don't talk to them about like the nice story and help people. Like go straight to metrics, know your numbers, and talk that face of your story. And just really understand, like listen to people, know where they want to be, and kind of throw out the parts of your story that are most relevant to who you're talking to. And I think really successful people in fundraising, it's an art that you get really good at. And the more that you know that channel of communication and can present the right piece of your story, that can make building relationships a lot more effective.
We're actually running out of time. I'd love to give you guys a minute just to conclude on your experience, and then we can
Your contact info is
Yeah. All right, so yours is so I guess what I talked about is basically around how you can fundraise online. 4 steps to it. First, you start with a solid foundation of your story. Second, find your true believers. Third, try to extend your network as much as you can. And then fourth is to build a great fundraising site. You can do that through us. We have super cheap rates, great for people like you. They can personalize and everything. You can also build your own too. I'm not trying to sell my mortgages. But if you guys do have questions, we don't have a lot of time. You can always contact me on Twitter at ROBJW, or I should be here today too. So feel free to grab me or Tyler.
And I can tell CauseVox, they do have the lowest percentage that they take from a fundraising campaign of any of the sites out there. So I can say that, Rob can. Yeah, my email's on our website, Runa.org. I'm also just Tyler@Runa.org. So everyone, please don't hesitate to email me. I'm also happy to send out some of our documents if people want documents to use as examples or compare to, like fundraising decks and things like that. So feel free to reach out. And if you have other questions come up, we'll be here for a little while.
Great, and I just wanted to conclude, thank you all for being here. The lunch session is going to be in the athletic complex, but please do come network, and thank you guys so much.